Welcome to EternalJourney, the podcast.
Greetings, all my knights and padawans. You are listening to EternalJourney, the podcast that talks about all things eternal with a focus on limited play. I'm your host, Jedi, and this week on episode 78 of the podcast, we are going to be talking about drafting justice in Argent Depths. That's right, do a deep dive into the various factions and archetypes that associate with justice, as most of us feel like it is the strongest faction in the set or in the format, but we'll get more in depth on that later. First, welcome me back on the show, my good friends, starting off with Alex Darth Herman 2. What's up, buddy?
Hey, what's up? How's it going?
Going great, man. And then on the other side of the virtual table here, another great person, soothing, sultry voice to massage your earlobes, we have John Holio.
It's me and my cricket friend tonight. Good evening, gentlemen.
Double soothing, like it. But we are also joined with another special guest, someone that has been consistently proven themselves in the limited format, being top ranked player month after month, despite just switching over to limited so recently. We have Batteriez. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here. Greetings, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for coming.
Little promptu, but we're happy to have you. But a little bit of housekeeping before we jump into it. Want to mention you can catch us streaming live every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday at twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ. And of course, if you can't make us at the live show, you can catch some of the highlights and various content, a little more informative tutorial based on the YouTube. Just search up EternalJourney to include the video version of this podcast, especially the set reviews. If you're a more visual learner and want to see all the cards up on screen, you can check that out there. This leads us into our shout out section where we show some love to the people that support the show and the channel. So you guys can do this by subbing to the Twitch channel. That's right, we mentioned it earlier. We have one new sub this week, which is Ulrich. Thank you so much for joining the Jedi Order. And then we have a couple of long timers here. Dizzy Sick coming in with 6 months, and Risper Visper making a year subbing in the channel. I can't believe they could put up with me for an entire year. That is insane. Thank you guys so much. And of course, thank you to all the ongoing supporters week in and month out, showing up on the streams and supporting the channel and the show. It means a whole lot to us. Shout out to fellow streamer and podcaster Sunnyvale for the big raid, or correction, host this week. Sunnyvale is the host of the Friends of Eternal podcast, as well as a very supportive and active Discord. And then a little personal shout out to the QCP Summer Challenge winner. That was Reason, that took it down with, surprise to absolutely no one, Rakano. But shout out to them. I doubt they listen to the podcast, but hey, shout out to them for throwing up a phenomenal performance. There were some big name people that came out to the tournament, and yeah, they took it down. So shout out to Reason. Congratulations on getting those sweet QCP points. And last thing, this is really just kind of a public service announcement that the Skycrag playmat bundle has been re-released, so to speak, or they postponed it and now they are releasing it. I just wanted to make a mention of this to, keep it up to date for those of you that do like cosmetic things, as well as giving a personal shout out to Direwolf Digital for listening to the community feedback. They were initially going to release it and by itself as a standalone, and there was a lot of pushback from the community saying it was too much and they wanted a little more, etc., etc. So Direwolf postponed the release, revamped it, and now they are releasing it. Let's see. Tomorrow. So probably about the time you guys are listening to this, maybe the day after. This is going to be on the 6th of August, and let me break it down. You'll be able to get it one of two ways, I would assume. First one is the bundle. First, I'll just read it right off the page. The first price of the bundle has been lowered from 6,000 gems to 5,000 gems on all platforms for 2 full expedition legal boxes and a draft ticket, in addition to the new playmat itself. We think that's a good deal that is well in line with our values of pricing, transparency, and generosity. And we greatly appreciate all of the player feedback we received to help us reach that point. Second, for players who like the playmat but might not want to purchase the full bundle, the Skycrack Glacier playmat will be available by itself for 1,500 gems starting on August 13th. Cosmetic pricing is always a tricky thing, and while we agree that we missed the mark the first time around, we think these two changes make for great value on a sweet new playmat and a whole pile of packs. As always, thank you for your feedback, and thanks for supporting Eternal. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the little interactive demo that they are showing on there. I'm not too big on cosmetics personally for me, but I can appreciate when my opponents have it. And I think it's absolutely great that were going to release something and pretty much literally held the presses so they could fix it because they just listen to the community, and not every developer will do that. So I think as much negative pushback sometimes Direwolf gets, they do pay attention to us and do try to do things right when it is within their capabilities. So shout out to Direwolf, man. You guys are doing good.
Totally. It was super awesome to see them listen to the feedback. Like, they responded really well, I think.
All right. Well, speaking of feedback, Batteriez, are you ready for some pack one, pick one action, buddy?
Oh, I love me some pack one, pick one action.
Sweet.
The defining moment of every draft, right?
Not if you're drafting with me. I think I play my pack one, pick ones probably about 20% of the time, honestly.
That's fair.
But all right, let's break it down. Because you're our guest, I'll actually give you just about the entire pack, and then we'll see what John and Alex have to say about it. So, starting off, we have Spellbound Ursine, the 3/3 bear for 5 primal, has Overwhelm and Imbue. Silverblade Reaper is the 1/1 Nightmare Valkyrie for 3 shadow, flying and deadly. Noble Protector is the 1/2 soldier for 1 justice, entomb, gain 2 armor. Ancient Machinist is a 2/1 explorer for 2 time. When you play a spell with cost 5 or more, transform Ancient Machinist into a sentinel with health or strength and health equal to that spell's cost. Overheating Minibot is a 3/2 Grenadin for 2 fire, reckless, pay 2 and sacrifice Overheating Minibot. Sacrifice Overheating Minibot to get +3 power this turn. Smogwing Tinker is a 4/4 flying tinker for 6 power and quad justice influence. Summon, gain 4 armor. Audacious Ruse is enemy units get minus attack this turn equal to your influence, and that is a fast spell for 2 justice. And Grizzled Quickshot is a 3/1 quick draw gunslinger for 5 fire, and it has Surge. Your units get +1 attack. So any of these commons are standing out to you right now, Batteriez?
As far as commons go, the Smogwing Tinker, always a solid pick. I mean, you were talking about Justice, and I'm definitely on Team Justice as well. So Smogwing Tinker, big standout there. Spellbound Ursine. He's a house too. Just Overwhelm, big dude, super good. Just start beating face with that.
Okay.
But Tinker is where I would probably lean out of these commons. Machinist is very solid too, but pretty synergy driven.
Okay, let's see if any of these uncommons can win over Smogwing Tinker. We have Prism Golem, a 7/7 golem for 3 generic power. Though there's some more text though. -2/-2 for each type of influence you have. So as soon as you play 1 influence, it will become a 5/5, and if you are a 2-color deck, it's going to be a 3/3 for 3 in most cases. We have Pillage is a 3 fire fast spell. Deal 3 damage to an enemy. Pillage deals double damage to units with endurance or lifesteal. And Murky Tentaclesis is a 5/2 Dire Beast for 5 shadow, unblockable. When you play a card with Destiny, draw Murky Tentaclesis from your void. All right, Batteriez, back to you, buddy.
Tentaclesis. Oh, I love seeing Tentaclesis. I would Snap pick one of Tentaclesis. I love beating people down with unblockable 5 attack units. There's some solid synergies in basically every faction pairing as well with it. Pillage is good as well. Interaction is always great, but Tentaclesis is just so many synergies and great win condition.
Yeah, it's a great standalone card for sure. All right, we do have a rare, and I have not had the chance to play against or with this card yet, but on paper it seems to have a little bit of power, so let's see if this can beat out the old Murky Tentacle Dire Beast. We have Jotun Ice Slinger. This is a 6/6 giant for 8 primal. Aegis. Summon, deal damage to an enemy unit equal to your shadow influence, and you gain that much health or life. What do you think, Batteriez?
I haven't drafted with it either. Like you said, on paper, it does a lot. But it is quite expensive, and you do put yourself into Felon as well if you're trying to make use of it. So I don't think it beats Murky here.
Okay. Alex, let's send it over to you. What do you think out of this pack? What are you looking at, and why?
I think if there's any spot to pick the Big Yeti, it's like as a pack one, pick one, and like build around it. And I also haven't really had any experience, whether it be good, bad, or neutral with the card. So I think I would want to play around with that, the Yeti, see if I can. So it seems like it'd be a good stabilizer. I know it does cost a lot, but it like gains you some life. It's gonna kill something, and then it's a big body. So yeah, I think I would try that.
Okay, John.
Yeah, Felton definitely has some support to make this guy really good, right? Like false demise, make him flying Aegis 6/6. That helps you stabilize every every time you play him, I guess. Yeah. I think there's some tools for him to be good in the format. I still think I'm with Batteries on this one. I would pick one this Murky Tentaclesis here. That little guy is a little more efficient, right? Only 5 and can just win the game if your opponent doesn't have an answer in the next couple turns usually. So
I think
it's a sweet card.
I think it's a little closer for me than probably for you guys, only because in a vacuum, Pillage beats Tentaclesis, right? But it's kind of one of those things where, granted, Pillage can go face, but one of the cards wins you the game. The other card kind of helps you win the game or make sure you don't die.
Yeah, that's like a tiebreaker kind of in my mind because they are close, like at first, but then like you can also like Tentaclesis can also just come back with what else with other cards you're just playing in your deck. So in that case, it kind of beats Pillage a little bit, and then again, like Tentaclesis can just win you the game, right? If it's just left unchecked. So like that gives it a lot more kind of points in its favor for me.
Yeah, and then obviously if you're looking at big picture as well, Tentaclesis also sets you up to potentially pick up some sweet removal spells in pack 2 and 3 as well. So yeah, I think the adult pick here is probably Tentaclesis, with the experimental, let's have some fun pick being the Ice Slinger, because you both bring up a pretty good point. Like, it having Aegis is kind of nice because that means you're not just going to spend your whole turn playing the 6/6 to have it die. It gains you a little bit of life. If you're in Felon, that has a good chance of maybe even killing your opponent. And then, much like you said, you could potentially have ways of bringing it back through Triumphant Return and False Demise. So it's pretty good as well. I would not fault anyone for taking it.
And Felon is a very controlling faction pair in this set too. So getting to the later turns where you might have 8 power to cast it isn't unreasonable.
That's exactly right.
I think you definitely could go for it and have some fun with it. But I agree with Jedi. Murky's probably the adult pick. Joe Nicelinger, if you want to have some fun, I'd probably pick Joe Nicelinger sometimes to have some fun.
Yeah, especially when you're streaming, right? You're like, all right, guys, let's do this for science, so you guys know whether it's good or not.
Definitely.
Yeah, you're totally right about it going in like a control deck, because it does cost 8, right? Like, and the ramp deck, like all the ramp support is in time, and this wants you to be Felm, like not Elysian, so it's a little awkward. Like if you're trying to like ramp to it, no, you want to like just get there naturally by controlling the game, I think.
Yep. Yeah, I think I would almost like to see this guy pack 4 when you've already picked up your removal, your shadow removal in packs 2 and 3, and you're like, all right, cool, I can buy the time to get there or whatnot. So, but all right, cool. So yeah, either Tentacles is once again is the adult pick, with the fun, innovative pick being the Ice Slinger here. All right, guys, that's going to do it for a pack one, pick one, which means we're going to go into our main topic today. And once again, this is going to be a deep dive breaking down the various archetypes for Justice. Hands down, everyone on the show today agrees that Justice is the strongest faction in the format. And it goes without saying, I will say it. I was going to say without saying, but I'm going to say it anyways. It's the fact of the matter is, it's not that it necessarily has the most powerful cards, but more of the fact that it is the deepest color, where if we're using a quote unquote table scenario where we have, X amount of people drafting, there things like Primal or Shadow, I feel like only one person can draft that deck and be in the correct spot to get the power level they need, versus in Justice you can have 2, maybe 3 people drafting it, so i.e. 2 people ahead of you drafting possibly, and you still come out with a pretty decent Justice deck, because there's so many playable cards in that faction that even if someone's taking Justice ahead of you, you still have a chance of receiving some powerful cards. You've seen on various streams where I've drafted decks in Justice that may not have all the powerful cards, or the cards that will put you in it, and it still performs because of how deep Justice is. So it is because of that reason that we're going to go ahead and break down each pairing, just to give you an idea of what are the signals you're looking for, what the deck wants to play, what it doesn't want to play, and how you should work a strategy for the deck. That being said, because they're all going to involve Justice, we're going to go ahead and do a quick breakdown of the Justice cards that will go in not only each one of these factions for the most part, faction pairings for the most part, but also they create the mono Justice deck, which is 100% viable. I mean, what are we looking at? Has anyone seen, I think I've seen a mono time, but I wasn't very impressed with it. I know they can stall a board state quite a bit. I think it's the timing of Reality Snap really that makes it work, but I know Mono Fire, Mono Justice. I haven't seen a Mono Shadow or Mono Primal. Have any of you guys come across that in your draft games?
I've not come across a Mono Shadow yet. I did come across a Mono Primal that went Prism Golem 3, Prism Golem 4, Frost Elemental Frost, turn 5, and then beat me up with a Water Conjuring after that. And that was a house, so
Oof.
there might be something to a mono primal, maybe, but I think it'd be really hard to draft.
Yeah, I think the one rule of thumb, you do have to really get lucky to go mono any faction in this format, just because it really requires you to have the same faction open in all 4 packs. You could be completely open in, for example, Justice can be wide open packs 2 and 4, but if you don't see enough support out of 2 and 3, you're still going to have a deck that's lacking playable. So you just have to get that high roll where all 4 packs, that's the open lane. And I think then you could go mono faction. Even then, you still have to make sure that you get those powerful cards in that faction to make it worth playing.
I've definitely also seen like Mono Fire. And Mono J and Mono Fire, I think, is what I've seen.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I think, Mono Fire has the tools to really push forward a lot of damage between Flash Fire and Battle Driver and Dagger to just go wide and just get in a ton of damage over blockers, to include Might Weaver as well, a personal favorite of my card. So I think, yeah, I definitely think when it comes to the mono factions, I think Justice and Fire probably the 2 strongest decks, but obviously you come across something like that Animal that Batteriez did and you're just gonna get steamrolled, so hey.
Yeah.
But all right, guys,
You'll be sitting there stunned.
Yeah. Boom. Nice. I like it. Oh, there you go. If we had a point system for the guest, you just ranked up a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into it. These are the Justice cards that you are going to want to take, or more or less regardless of what deck you're in, with a couple of slight variations. So Smogwing Tinker is at the top of the list, pretty much just what Battery was saying. And it's a 4/4 flyer, which is solid, especially at 6 power. And you don't even need relic weapons to make it good. Just gaining 4 armor, gaining you 4 life, and putting a body on the ground is very powerful. And a 4/4 flyer does quite a bit of work in this format. Next up is the Greenstone Officer. This card is a phenomenal 2-drop. It is the tri-faction color or tri-faction unit for Justice, because there is a cycle of these things. It's 2/2 lifesteal with Imbue, and even if it's on the board, you could pay 2 and exhaust it to Imbue later on. This card doesn't need, because of the lifesteal, it doesn't need to be huge to do some work. If you can get it up to like a 5/5 off of a 3/3 or something like that, it's going to do some serious work. Heaven forbid you should make it bigger. Emerald Crafter is the 4-drop 3/3 that whenever you play power, or correction, whenever you surge, the Emerald Golem that it makes at once it entombs or dies will get bigger. This card is great as well, especially you can get, even if you just break even, you get 2 triggers on this thing and you spit out a 3/3 when it dies, you're doing pretty darn good. Anything above that, you're just doing phenomenal. Getting, for example, 7 worth of stats off of 4 power is phenomenal, etc, etc. Probably the most powerful common that we're seeing in the format from a lot of people, myself included, is Siphoner Paladin. That's the 1/5 3-drop that you can sack a unit to make a 3/3 weapon, or give a +3/+3 to any weapon that you already have, relic weapon you already have equipped. These are all phenomenal units that do a lot of work. And just rounding out the units real quick, we also have Caravan Guard and Frontline Volunteer. These kind of go together. They're both 3/5s and 3/4s at 3 that do a fantastic job of gumming up the board and giving your Justice decks time to either build up their late game or simply just start attacking. If you are heavy influence, it can attack with Caravan Guard off the bat. It does a great job of slowing down these very aggressive decks like the Stone Scar deck and the Mono Fire. Combat tricks, once again, powerful. You're going to get a lot of these, or actually all of these, in the curated packs, but Victory Rush, or Victor's Cry. Sorry, I don't know. My bad. Victor's Cry, Finest Hour, and obviously from the last format, Wind Conjuring is just all absolutely busted cards that could do a ton of damage or help you in their own right be removal spells. Another card that I think that people are undervaluing, and I'm taking them as highly as I can, is Mantle of Justice. This card is just so good if you're heavy primal and you pick up a couple of symbols in pack 1, maybe a couple in pack 4, then you're going to be able to pump up your various 2-drops and 3-drops that are already overstated and make them just absolutely huge. The biggest removal spell also is Defiant. Just being clean, efficient removal, being able to leave up 1 power is hard for your opponent to tell when you have it up, and it just gets the job done. Card that is continually overperforming for me, and I think now the secret's out, and when you're in Justice, is Unbreakable Tradition. Just a 5-cost fast spell that doubles your unit's stats, and it does copy temporary buffs that turn as well as recognizing damage. This card, just, you can blow out your opponent out of nowhere. If you're sending in, once again, your Smogwing by itself, they think they're going to take 4, you do this, all of a sudden they're taking 8. Sometimes it can kill a bigger unit, and now there's very few things that could deal with that flyer. Heaven forbid you have a huge imbue target like a Greenstone Officer that's maybe a 5/5 or 6/6. You do this, now all of a sudden it is a 12/12 lifesteal. Very difficult to deal with. Oldie but goodie, Siege Provisions. That card is still strong. It may not be as completely busted as it used to be, but it is still a very powerful card. And then a couple of classics: Auric Sentry, the 1/5 with War Cry and Endurance; 4/3 Elder, the 4/6 flyer with Endurance. Just it's the mythic uncommon, or the legendary uncommon for limited. Always has been, it probably will continue to be. And as I mentioned earlier, Justice symbols, just being able to smooth out those heavy influence requirements are just great picks. Badge of Honor is an honorable mention for this deck. I think it's good, but depending on what deck you want, it may not go in all of them. But Justice symbol, you're definitely happy picking those things up at any point in time. Batteries, we're going to start off with you. Anything you have to say about our Justice all-stars, the generic all-stars, if you will?
Yeah, Siphoner Paladin. I see them go so late so often. The card is absurd. Just like it's gonna eat up most 2-drops, and then you can Siphoner into another Siphoner, and now you have an even bigger weapon, and you're taking out an even bigger unit. I think the card is somehow getting underrated and underpicked. Maybe people are just bored of drafting it. I don't know, but it's a house.
Yeah, I've definitely lost and won games off of random 2-drop, like especially Porter, and then Siphoner Paladin kill their 2-drop, Siphoner Paladin kill their 3-drop, and now they're hesitant to play the 4-drop because I have a 6-2 weapon just sitting there waiting for it. And you know what? Sometimes, honestly, it is 100% okay to just play the 1/5 body to block so much damage. Once again, I've been on the receiving and the dishing end of that, where it just blocks anywhere from 5 to 12, 13 damage. And you're just like, gosh, I can't get through this thing.
Yeah, 5 HP is one heck of a wall, And the thing about like drafting Justice too, like it always does you justice. Like you were saying earlier, there's like the pool is so deep, and even if someone else is drafting it, you're just gonna find so many good cards. There's so many good ones in Justice. Like all these cards are just very, very good cards to pick up.
Alex, do you have anything to add about Justice? At least the generic good stuff?
I guess generic good stuff was Chain Whip Bludgeoner, just a pretty much good Justice 2-drop in any Justice deck that you're in, pretty much. So I would say that's one of just the generally good Justice commons.
Fair. Yeah, I could see that. It pretty much does go good in just about any Justice deck. I will say that though, I feel Bludgeoner gets picked higher than Siphoner Paladin, because I'm with Batteries. I see this thing. Sometimes I'll see a Siphoner Paladin 6th or 7th pick, and I'm like, all right, sure, I'll go in. But
I know.
Yeah, they both go late. Weird.
John, anything to add?
I mean, just kind of add on to what you guys are saying. I think like Siphoner is a better card overall than Bludgeoner, but to like your average, maybe more casual drafter, I think Bludgeoner just looks better. Like people hate, I think value ages very highly in this game from playing Constructed maybe, and like look at Siphoner as like kind of a risky thing, without fully considering its power, potential. Because I agree completely.
I think the one sad thing for Bludgeoner in the format is it's living in a format with Siphoner Paladin, right? Because
exactly.
You play that Bludgeoner onto, and yeah, your opponent maybe played like a Clergy or like some 2-drop. It doesn't even matter what 2-drop, but now all of a sudden they're going Siphoner Paladin, eat your Bludgeoner, and you're in a brutal position.
The other thing too is just the fact that the Siphoner Paladin, kind of like the flip side to what you just mentioned, Batteries, is the fact that Siphoner Paladin gives you a little bit of insurance for playing those suboptimal 1 and 2 drops, right? That can trigger your plunder. You're like, man, I really don't want to play just a 1/1 on turn 2, but if you get to plunder with it, and then you can cash it in for a 3/3 weapon, essentially almost for free, then you're getting some serious value out of it. And so I think that's another upside to it, where you're like, you want to run the plunder cards, but then you're like, it's kind of an underwhelming body. I mean, shoot, the last deck I ran a patroller and then 3 clergies, and that's not a very impressive early game, but it worked out great because I had 3 Siphoner Paladins. So sometimes they blocked on their own, and sometimes I was just like, cool, I'll just play it and then feed it to the Paladin. So I think it's a hidden gem. And then once again, seriously, Victor's Cry and Wind Conjuring, those things are pretty much removable spells in Justice.
Yeah, they're houses. I mean, Wind Conjuring is still Wind Conjuring. It wins games for sure. And same with Victor's Cry. It's such a beating once it comes back. And then if you drafted some Unbreakable Traditions, maybe that Victor's Cry comes back on Revenge, and then you get to boom smack it with an Unbreakable Tradition, and now you have a 10/10 permanent buff on your unit.
Oh yeah.
Super good.
Yep. The one thing I will talk about here is we are going to try to focus on commons and uncommons. We will occasionally mention some rares and stuff, but obviously we're going to focus on the commons and uncommons because that is what you guys are going to be seeing the most of. So just keep that in mind. There's some rares and legendaries that are just good, period, regardless of what deck you're running. It's like, hey, you open up a Svetya. If you're in Justice, just take the Svetya. It doesn't matter what archetype you're in. So don't expect to hear too many of those, but we will mention them on specific occasions when they have some additional synergy with the various archetypes. But starting us off with the deck that I feel like is open 4 out of 5 drafts I do, and I feel bad because I feel like everyone watching my stream just sees me draft Huru, but it's always open. I'm seeing 3 Mighty Leaps in pack 1 super late, and late Siphoner Paladin. So starting us off with Huru. Alex, take it away, my friend.
It's funny you say that. Like every deck you draft is Huru because I did 3 in a row and I swear I was not forcing it. But if I see the Valiant Leaps going around, that's like my biggest sign that this deck is open because that card is just so good, especially in this deck. Yeah, this is a really fun deck for me to play. I don't know about you guys, but it's the tempo stun / flyers deck. There's a lot of imbue units, a lot of imbue stuff going on, and a lot of bonuses for having stunned units. So I'll just state a few of these cards. So we'll go with Boulder Gate Guard. It's a 1-drop 0/3 flyer that gets +2 power when there's a stunned. That one is any stunned unit, right? So it gets +2/+3 flyer. The Frostbite Elemental, it's a 4/5 for 2 that can attack or block unless there is a stunned unit. Is that the opponent on that one? I don't
I
have
think that one's any stunned unit as well.
that
Yep.
one. So stunned unit, so it just becomes like a house, like instantly if you have a fast effect stun thing. The Terrazon Echo, this card looked so bad when we did the review, but it's gone up for me, especially in this deck because it works so good with Valiant Leap and just being able to trigger the Berserk. You can just win the game out of nowhere with that little guy. The Spellbound Ursine and Auric Official, that's the 3/3 primal for 2 primal and imbue. It's the house, you mentioned that earlier, Batteriez. And then the Auric Official is a 1/1 imbue, that's the Justice for 3 and 1. And imbue, it gets +1/+1. So that gives you a stunned unit, which triggers your other guys. Frost and Shatter. These are all commons or uncommons so far. The Frostbite Elemental and Terrazon Echo are the uncommons. Frost Shatter. Frost is the common to stun a unit. It has Revenge. And then Shatter for 1, you can kill a stun enemy unit. So that goes really good together. And then giving things like Cartographer flying with your Valiant Leaps. That's good. Gale Prowler is a good thing to just with this. It's a really good card for me in this set. I don't know about you guys, but it just gets flying and then something else flying. So it's like in the air, all of a sudden you're attacking for like 8, 9, or 10 in one turn. Levitate, give something flying or sensing a theme here. And then you have Biting Winds and Lightning Strike for your defense when everything is coming back at you. Cloud Snake Mount, that's an uncommon. This is a great card and like kind of maybe directs you into going into this deck. 0/2 flyer, it has imbue, and for 6 you can do exhausted into 2 damage to any target. Sky Serpent, 3/3 flyer, right? That's that one. 3/3 flyer for 2, but you need 3 primal. Ancient Serpent gets back some of your spells that you're triggering stuff off. 3/4 flyer for 3 primal and 3. and Shield Bash is just a good. I mean, it's an okay card. It's like one of the ones that gets cut if you have a lot of the other stuff because it costs 4. It does draw you a card. In a pinch, you can use it. Siphoner Paladin, Chain Whip Bludgeoner, Copper Hall Porter all fit very nicely into this deck as well. Even it's not like really on theme, but who doesn't want, Siphoner Paladins in their deck and more power?
The theme there is winning.
Yeah, it's just winning. It's just a great card. And then there's so many good cards. So the signal card for me is what I said earlier, is just like the Valiant Leap. And then if you see, like, sometimes you'll see a very late, like, Frostbite Elemental, and that pretty much tells me that you can go into this deck. The Greenstone Officer works very well with imbuing stuff, because you get the stun unit. Sorry, little brain fart there. And then Jarl's Frostkin, I almost forgot to mention him. He's like, I swear he's boosted in the middle packs, because you just see that guy going around. It's just a great 4-drop, 3 and 1 primal, and it just stuns a unit.
5 times boosted.
5 times boosted. There you go. So that's why I'm seeing.
Oh my, yeah, I love me Frosty.
It's a great card. Yeah. So this deck is super fun, and it's, for me anyway, it's so easy to fall into it. It's just, it's not making any picks that are like I'm twisting my arm. It's like, yeah, let's do all of this stuff. So I love this deck. It's probably up there as one of my favorite archetypes in the format. And I guess a couple rares. Jedi had wrote these earlier. Tell It, still broken, even if it's not permanent. You can maybe win if your opponent has one now instead of just automatically lose. And then Svetya is just a great card. Yeah. Yeah, great deck. I love it. What do you guys think?
The Valiant Leap is really what is kind of the glue that holds the deck together, because it gives you're essentially getting 2 cards out of 1. You're getting a combat trick that you can use offensively or defensively to take out your opponent's units, and then the fact that it has Echo, or I'm sorry, Revenge and Destiny, means that it can come back, and then it doesn't matter. Rarely does it ever get played on a turn where you can't do something, which in most cases you just swing with the unit. If it's in a bad spot, then obviously it might make your unit big enough to block, and now your opponent is disincentivized to attack. But a lot of times you just put it on whatever unit you can afford or you're not going to block with, and send it in red zone to get some extra damage. Obviously in Huru you'll get the +2/+2. That's where the combat trick side comes out of it. And then it gives it Overwhelm as well. So if your opponent is sitting there with a Humbug or something, your bigger units are still going to get through to push some damage, which also is where you get the value out of Cartographer. So I really do. Seeing Valiant Leaps go late is really what starts to pull me into Huru for sure. John, do you have anything to add?
I mean, I this was like early on my favorite deck in the format. I was trying to convince you guys. I think about a lot of these cards that you guys were pretty skeptical on a lot of these that made Alex's list. So I'm glad you guys are coming around on it.
Nope.
Yeah, I totally drafted one of these decks and was telling you what was in it. You're like, oh yeah, that's the deck I'm telling you about. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, Boulder Gate Guard. You guys were like, what? I'm like, yeah, dude, I love this little guy.
Yeah, and it's like in this deck, he's just great. He's like been a finisher for me,
Right. Yeah, there's not a lot of flyers.
See, and I don't know. I'm still like, I have not gone that deep. I'm still not on Guard. I'm still not on Frostbite Element, or I'm sorry, Terrazon Echo, and I'm still not on. I mean, Gale Prowler's probably the one that I would be most inclined to add to the deck, but my decks don't run any of those if I can help it.
One card that I also really love in this deck is a Minotaur Duelist, the 5-cost 3/2 Revenge Minotaur that stuns a unit. Probably one of my favorite cards, in the Huru stun deck. Like getting that body, multiple Revenge procs and stun procs. Oof, I love it. And I feel like you see quite a few.
That's 10 times boosted.
Okay, that's what I thought. I see so many duelists. I see so
Yeah.
many duelists.
Yeah.
That's like a huge one to look for in packs 2 and 3 for that deck.
Yeah, and that's where the Brood what is it? What's the name of the brood now? The brood of Airmont? No, not what is it? Yeah, right. Is it brood of Airmont or
Yeah,
brood
the
of Carlet?
3/4,
Yeah,
3/3 flying for
the
4.
3/3 flying for 4, and then the uh, Sky Serpent. Those you land those two guys, and then you start hitting them with a draws Frostkin, followed up by the Duelist to just stun their biggest guy or stun their one flyer to block, and you just get in so ahead on tempo because you're still developing your board. You're taking out their blockers, you're stopping their attacks, and that's really where this deck shines.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like Frost as well, just in the format overall as like interaction. You know, like we talking about the Justice tricks and how powerful the Justice tricks are at pumping your units. You know, blowing out those big attacks or like big Might Weaver attacks and stalling out and being able to swing yourself is just so powerful. I feel in this format, and being able to get it at a later turn so you can hit the biggest one and then hit that biggest one at a later time, like I feel is really, really effective in the format.
Nope.
Even just on its own.
I agree. All right, we still got 3 more factions to talk about, so let's move on. John, why don't we send it back to you for Rockanu?
All right. So I think Fire and Justice in general, just in the format in general, are both very strong. So, you know, if those colors are open in your packs, you really can't go too wrong. Just generally speaking, I think it's a strong color pairing in the format. Stronger than a lot. I think in general, though, the deck wants to be on the aggressive side, and then both Fire and Justice, especially from Argent Depths, have a lot of big influence requirements and payoffs for matching for meeting or just generating a ton of influence in both Fire and Justice. So like there is some tension there. If you want to go like Rakano Surge, you really have to prioritize like ways to generate extra influence. And then there's also like a double damage kind of theme. If you manage to get a Might Weaver or two in the Argent Depths packs, you can really kind of build around that and just kind of do a sneaky blitz style deck that can just kind of win out of nowhere. So that's another kind of fun Rakano archetype in the format. So cards to talk about. I just mentioned Might Weaver, and that's like BFFs with, you know, EJ laughing stock, except for Alex from last format, the Inferno Zealot card, which is 5 times boosted in packs 2 and 3. And just Might Weaver in general is just super powerful. Like it doesn't, you know, kill the opponent itself, but basically it turns any of your cards into a potential lethal threat, and your opponent will be scared, just scared they're gonna die at any point, which is a fun way to play the game. And then we got Chain Whip Bludgeoner. We already talked about, goes great with Rakano because, like I said, you generally prioritize ways to generate influence in both of these colors. Then Battle Driver is just a great fire card. Like it'll help some of your earlier units, you know, be relevant in the later game. So I think it's just good in any deck playing fire in general, but it works best if you're able to generate like tokens, for example, with the corrosive daggers, like is one of the best ways to do this. And so that's like one of the areas where you know, it's like, man, I really want to generate a ton of fire influence, but I also want to play my Tinker drone dropper, or not drone dropper, but my Tinker flyer, you know, 6-drop for justice influence. Like if your deck is trying to do both of those things, you got to really make sure that you can actually do that. Flameheart Patrol is another great surge card, great aggressive 2-drop. And then like this deck actually does not mind playing like a kind of normally medium trick like Rampage. I don't think if you have a Battle Driver, you know, Rampage might be one of your first cuts, but that's just, you know, a way to kind of close out a game. And Rampage plus Might Weaver is like premium. You know, that's the exact kind of thing you want, because it turns on the double damage while making whatever unit be able to push through any defenses. And then we got Badge of Honor and Emerald Crafter. I would, if I'm seeing those kind of coming around, like halfway through pack 1, I'd say that's a sign that Justice is open, and then like those two are, enabler / surge payoff cards. So I think those are great in Rakano in particular. Armed and Dangerous. I don't know, Jedi. You have that in here. I'm still not.
I put a question mark
sold.
on it.
Yeah, question mark. We can talk about it. Like, I'm still not sold on that. I think like that's more of like a mono fire payoff for the most part. Because I think you can do better with some of like the other weapons and things available in like packs 2 and 3 Injustice now in the format. Like, we were so thirsty for weapons in the last format, but I think they've kind of done a good job putting some back in. So I don't know. I think like if your deck is comprised of a lot of like 1s, 2s, and 3s and nothing really higher, then yeah, you'd play one of those, but not otherwise. The signal cards I just mentioned. I think Emerald Crafter and Badge of Honor. In pack 2, like if you're getting past a Tinker Drone Dropper, I'd say that's a huge sign. That's one that is going to show up relatively often. It's a very boosted rare, and it's a very Rakano card. So, I would be super happy that I'm like in Rakano, or if I was on the fence, like between Justice and like Fire and Justice and another faction going into pack 2, and somebody passes me a Drone Dropper, that would put me like heavily, I think, into Rakano as a sign. And then same with like an uncommon in those packs, Champion of Glory. That's another boosted one. So those are 2 boosted cards to look out for that are, I think, signs for Rakano. And then there's just a ton of combat tricks in the format, and this is the exact kind of deck that wants to play like quite a few of those. Use them like as removal. You talked about Victor's Cry, plenty. That's the 10 times boosted card. Then like Rampage and Finest Hour are both 5 times boosted, and then we already mentioned Windvoking with Wind Conjuring. Like, those are all just fantastic for this deck. And then symbols are just juicy for this deck. You definitely, if there's a medium, unit, or a symbol, I think if you're leaning into Rakano, you might take the symbol more heavily. Anything to add, Jedi?
How do you feel about Hammer of Glory if you get past it, packs 2 or 3?
Yeah, sure. Like I think any heavy influence in Rakano, like I just mentioned those in particular because those are both like I think 10 times boosted, right? So the ones I mentioned, like I don't think the hammer's boosted at all. So like that's not one that you'll see very often.
The other thing, just to add on the Armed and Dangerous thing, because I've cut it plenty of times from my decks, I think where I've seen it perform the best is when you have Might Weavers, because when you can turn 2 units that weren't double damage all of a sudden to big 10, 12 damage all of a sudden, I think that really throws off your opponent's math, and where Armed and Dangerous can really shine.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind playing it just, I guess, if I have a Might Weaver in general. I think it's just, in complete general terms, I think it fits a little bit better in Praxis, because and Might Weaver does great in Praxis too, just because there's generally bigger units in time, and there's a lot of like flyers that you can put it on in time, which is just generally good. And then there's also that whole 5 cost spell matters thing going on. So I think it has a little more synergy there in general, but I think it works as like a top end replacement in a low to the ground deck.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of low to the ground, where do you value cheap removal like Blazing Salvo and Chemical Rounds for this deck?
Oh yeah, that's something I forgot to mention. Like, there's a ton of cards like that, right? Like Seer and like those like damage cards like that. I like them a lot. I mean, I'd play those in any deck. If I just have splash fixing available, I'd play like a Seer, a Salvo, or something like that in the format a lot of times, because removal tends to be hard to come by, and dealing 2 or 3 damage has shown to be very relevant. And then in packs 1 and 4, you have Decay in particular, which I think has overperformed, and I think is particularly good in Rakano.
Batteries, do you have anything to
add? Yeah, I think one card that is really good in Rakano is Slag Fury Berserker as well. You have all those surge effects with like Patrollers and Bludgeoners, and so if you can get that big surge turn in, and then you slap a Slag Fury Berserker onto it, and now you have this big Berserk unit. I think that's a really good card in the Rakano deck as well. Cinder Paw is another one that's Trail Torch Cinder Paw. I suppose I should describe the Slag Fairy Berserker for the listeners. It's a 3-cost 1/1 Berserk Imbue unit. So you can make that big unit, and then you can strap all those temporary stat buffs. And then Cinder Paw is the 4-cost 2/2 charge, summon, get attack, highest attack. It gets attack equal to the highest attack among your units. I've been blown out quite a few times by Cinder Paws. The card is scary.
Works great with Might Weaver and Inferno Zealot. So yeah, definitely another great Rakano card. Good call, Batteries.
See, and I'm still pretty medium on it. Like I see the value to it, and I've lost to it a couple of times, and I've put in a couple of decks, but I'm still not. I think the community as a whole values Cinderpaw a lot higher than I do, and that's perfectly fine. Like, you guys know me, I'm always a worst case scenario kind of guy. I'm like, I see this thing dying all the time. So, but it is good.
It is definitely a more rolly card. Like, you kind of throw your dice with that card a little bit more, because you have to have a good board. You have to have good attacks with it. So, it can kind of be hit or miss, but it can also just win games out of nowhere. So I think it's a nice addition sometimes.
Reminds me of like Blurhaze Worm, I guess. Because of all those things you just said. Like, it doesn't perform the same way at all, but it's like it can go so horribly wrong. It's just a 1/4, but man, when things are going right, boy, does that card overperform.
Two other cards. I'm not sure if you brought it up or not, John. I apologize. I don't remember. But 2 cards in packs 2 and 3 that could also put you in Rakano are Flamekeeper, the 4/2 Overwhelm Exalted, and Flashfire. Obviously, if you're a little heavier on the fire side, doing damage to an enemy, period, based on your fire influence, are both cards that I feel like there's a weapon also that that puts me into it. Is it the Maul, right? The 6/3 Overwhelm? That's in the packs, yes?
I think so. Flamekeeper's a great one to mention.
Yeah.
That's a 10 times boosted card, and it's a fantastic one.
Yeah, Flamekeeper is definitely a great addition to that.
And then Maul's in the packs, but it is not boosted at all, so kind of rare.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I managed to pick up 2 of them, but I almost drafted a deck with 3 Flamekeepers. I was like, oh man, I had to audible that time. I should have audible just a little bit sooner, and I would have gotten hooked up. But fair enough, I was still happy with 2 of them. But all right, that is going to do it. Oh, I'm sorry, Alex, do you have anything to add about Rakano?
It does have like a weapon sub theme. I mean, I know Argent Port, and you're going to talk about it, is like more armory. But you could do a lot of good, Rakano's weapons are unmatched, as we all know. So yeah, just wanted to mention that.
Sweet. Thanks for that bomb segue. So that is correct. Our next one we're going to be talking about is Argent Port, which is Shadow Justice. And this is actually, I think there is a slight aggressive side to it, but I think it's more of a attrition type, a slower attrition game. There is a tempo play to it based on if you can do something like what Batteries mentioned earlier, going 2-drop into Siphoner. But this deck synergizes around just getting 2-for-1s, potential 3-for-1s off of some good relic weapons as your pseudo removal, and then getting in damage with your medium to good units. There's some serious value synergies here. A couple of things to talk about. So the 2-drops that you want to really pick up, and this deck can use Bludgeoner, but I think this deck of all actually leans a little bit away from Bludgeoner, just because you're really looking to pick up those Siphoner Paladins that lead this in. I'll go into some of the shadow cards that put you in this deck as well. But Copperhaw Porter, obviously a 2-drop that gives you your Justice power should it entomb. Noble Protector is probably the least exciting one out of all of these, and this one just gives you 2 armor, which does synergize obviously once again with those weapons. It's not completely irrelevant. Solemn Clergy is your silence effect, which is phenomenal. I think this does a lot of work. Also a plunder unit, so you're able to clean up your draws, whether you can turn that extra power into treasures, or you can turn those units that are too high on your curve or the ones you don't need into power so you can smooth out your curve. Dark Wisp is the 1/1 that draws you a card when it's entombed. And finally, to a lesser extent, because this one's a little bit better later in the game, is Entranced Cultist. Obviously not the best 2-drop, but later in the game it can give some of your bigger units quick draw, which could be relevant. So that is something, not the most preferred, but it gives you 2 bodies for the price of 1 with some upside. Later in the curve, you are running things that I'm not super excited about, but they are perfectly fine in this deck in the form of Promising Pupil and Rabble Rouser, as well as the aforementioned Minotaur Duelist. All cards that have Pupil has Exalted, while Rouser and Duelist have Revenge. So once again, getting additional value out of the sack target. Some of the weapons you're looking at, obviously the highest one here, you want to take Backbreaker, or obviously get the weapons from Siphoner Paladin. Backbreaker is really your payoff weapon here, being a 6/1 for 5 shadow weapon, and then it gets plus armor equal to the justice influence you have. So the good side about this is you can be as heavy justice as you want with a light touch in the shadow to give you that double shadow to make this weapon good. You start getting this weapon up to a 6/6, 6/7, 6/9, or even comboing it off with the Smog Wings and getting this thing, 6/10. Now you're talking about a weapon that it's very hard pressed for your opponent to deal with. You're going to be able to take out the majority of things on their board, and they're going to be hard pressed to take this out, especially if you have 1 or 2 Caravan Guards or Siphoner Paladins on the ground to block. Next up would be Heirloom Blade. This is the 6-cost 4/4 weapon, but you can sack a unit to make it cost only 2. Once again, getting value off of those early sack effects, and putting down an early 4/4 weapon can almost automatically get you 2 for 1, maybe even more, because your opponent, depending on what's in their hand, if they have like an imbue target or something like that, they are really disincentivized to play this, and sometimes you could definitely win the tempo game there, where your opponent just has nothing good to play. And then of course the probably C line for me are Sanguine Sword, which is the 4-cost 2/2 that you can sack unit to make a 4/4, and then Night Watch Broadsword, which is the 4/3 for 5 that every time one of your units dies, it gets +1 armor. Both completely serviceable. A couple of one unit that adds to the weapon synergy that is not inherent is the Auric Weaponsmith. This card you can pick up in packs 2 and 3, which is the 3/3 for 4 that whenever you play a weapon, it gets a +1/+1. There's some added synergy. Going back to the sack effects, these cards don't really fall into the armory side. They lean more over to the sack fodder, but still give you some more value of this deck, which is Ravenous Stormbeast, being a 3/3 for 3 shadow that can become a 5/5. We've already seen the power and value of Prism Golem in these mono faction decks. So Ravenous Stormbeast is essentially another version of that with just a little bit of setup. And then Direwood Prowler is a 6-cost 5/5 that when you sack a unit, it gains you or draws you 2 cards, which is absolutely phenomenal. This really gives you that sweet card advantage later in the game, putting a relevant body, cashing in one of your non-relevant units, and then giving you card advantage there. Cool thing about being in Argent Port as well is that is the weapon synergies. It does adjust your removal package a little bit. Detain actually, I feel like, goes up in value in this deck. Detain is pretty strong across the board, but obviously Combat Tricks win it out. Detain, I think, it really shines in this deck because the -6 to opposing units can allow you to stop flyers from reducing your weapons, but also allows your weapons, your relic weapons, to attack into opposing units and not lose any armor. So it just increases the chance of you getting that sweet 2-for-1 and 3-for-1 action, as well as it only being 1 power. So it's easy to leave up and can confuse your opponent what combat trick you have up. Now we're going to talk about just the general value of this deck. These are all cards that don't 100% synergize, but you're perfectly fine taking them to put you into these colors. Things like Fear Tracker, the 5/4 that deals 3 damage and gains you 3 life. Just an all-around great unit. We already talked about Murky Tentaclesis earlier. Not enough revenge in here unless you're taking things like Rouser, Duelist, and Midnight Hunt, but it's still phenomenal card its own. You also get access to Champion of Vengeance, which is the Argent Port champion. For 4 green, it gets invulnerable on your turn, and for 4 shadow, every time it attacks, it gets +2 attack. So this card can run away with the game if your opponent does not have a way to answer it. Then of course, having access to Shadow means that in packs 2 and 3, you get some serious advantage on removal. Having access to Annihilate, Defile, Suffocate, Devouring Shadow, Death Strike, and Cut Ties, all being in Shadow. So you're going to be anything that your weapons can't handle. You can probably have 1 or 2 removal spells in there to get that off the board. And for a little bit more sack synergy, you also have access to Devour if that suits your fancy. Rares that you are shine here, Rollant. Just Rollant. It's good, but both versions, especially the Argent Port one, because now you're cashing in. Not only are you getting 2-for-1s, 3-for-1s with those weapons, but then you're also getting a 1/1 flyer that's deadly that can further up your attrition and just outvalue your opponent. Oscar gets fully turned on, so any units that die in your turn, they come back as Flying Deadly Valkyries. And Jadehorn really shines in this deck, giving you 3 armor for a 3/3 body for 3 with Warcry. That's nothing but value, even if you don't have a relic weapon in play. And if you do, not only does it gain the armor, but that turn the weapon can attack twice. And it is a corrupted unit, so you get to do this twice. It is 10 times boosted, so you're going to be seeing quite a few of those. And then Tellet is really good in this deck because you capitalize on the -1 to the opponent's attack on their units, but also you get that sweet +1/+1 action on your relic weapons to just further get ahead of your opponent. The signpost that you have here to let you know that these things are open. Really, Backbreaker is going to be the biggest one in packs 1 and 4. If you're seeing this, Backbreaker is okay in some kind of just shadow deck, but if you're not running Justice, it's going to be a 1-of to get your opponent to 5-cost removal spell, which is serviceable, but it's really Argent Port that's going to make this happen. Obviously, the late Siphoners and the Backbreakers are another one that are going to be the signals where you're going to be the only deck that really wants to take them. The other cards, I really feel, kind of go in all the Shadow or Justice decks. So those are the ones that really stand out. And obviously any Argent Port rares that we this also includes Bartholo's Keepsake is the 3-cost card that obviously lets you dig. But yeah, I would say Siphoner Paladin and Backbreaker are really the 2 cards that put you far ahead. And then if you're starting to see the shadow removal spells in pack 2, then I think it's safe to go in. But yeah, this deck plays out really well. You have to expect the long game. Sometimes you can tempo your opponent out if you play the relic weapon the right way and the removal lines up and things like that. But the majority of the time, you're going to try to gum up the board a little bit and kind of get your weapons online, establish your board state, and then start smashing your opponent till you just outcard them. Let's send over to you, Batteriez. What's your experiences with the Argent Port deck?
I love drafting the Argent Port deck, actually. It's probably one of the ones I've drafted the most. You get Grizzly Contest as well is one you can get in there. Since you're playing Siphoner Paladins, you can really load up on like those early 2-drops, and you can play like Grizzly Contest. But yeah, just between like all the efficient removal, playing Siphoner Paladins, Direwood Prowler, like I love Direwood Prowler too. You're getting paid off for playing all these kind of like mediocre units on 2 that allow you to play the game early, and then you just transfer into this late game that's like nickel and diming you until you just lose the game. On that note, I also really like Mysterious Waystone as like a 1-of, 2-of sometimes if you have plenty of sacrifice fodder, because you are like playing that nickel dime control game, and you can kind of just like, if you take it up enough, it's really hard to lose the game with a Mysterious Waystone in play, which is the 5-cost relic. Whenever you sacrifice a unit, it deals 1 damage and you gain 1 health at the end of turn, and then whenever you sacrifice a unit, it increases the damage and life gain by 1. I really like that card in the sacrifice deck as well.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. And the cool thing is you don't have to go too far off the beaten path to make Mysterious Waystone work in this deck, because it really goes with the game plan. I'm glad you mentioned Grizzly Contest, because I'm personally not a big fan of that card. I can count on one hand how many decks I've put it into. Just the random echo and having to sack a unit is kind of too much of a liability for me personally, but I do think that card is good. Don't get me wrong. That's a little more personal bias than the actual rating of it.
I do agree with you. It's something you really have to be wary about. Like if you're going to be playing Grizzly Contest, you don't want to pick up too many, and you really do need to load up on your 2-drops, which you probably should be doing if you're playing Argent Port Sacrifice. Like normally I think limited decks try to play 6 to 8 2-drops, right? I think that's like a general rule of thumb people kind of go for, I think.
Yes.
But like in Argent Port Sacrifice, I have no problem running anywhere between like 9, 10, 2-drops and just really loading up, especially with like Will Breaker. Will Breaker is another great 2-drop for sacrifice fodder. And the Silverwing Familiar too, the Revenge 1/1 flyer, things that give you multiple bodies for cheap.
I think I'm higher on the double damage on the Will Breaker than I am the Valkyrie. I take it if it's the last pick, but I unless I have a mantle or two on my deck, I typically try to cut it because it's just so medium. At least the Will Breaker has double damage, and it has some upside where if your opponent's playing the Huru deck or the Legion deck, you can drop down some of their attackers or whatnot. So
yeah, and you have a lot more control over that second body, right? You can play a Siphoner Paladin. That corrupted body has 2 health, so it's going to stick around for another turn. I can trade with 2 health units, so I definitely agree there. You're going to pick Will Breakers over Silverwings, but if you're hurting for fodder, picking up the Silverwings, it's not a bad thing. Because for the most part, you are kind of just exchanging your early units for value with sacrifice.
Yeah, and
payoffs.
While we're on the topic of Will Breaker as an alibi, it goes very well in the Rakano deck as well if you're carrying a lot of weapons and combat tricks.
Yeah,
it's one of the few double damage just units at common available. Yeah, double damage is just a scary thing, and that deck wants combat tricks, so it overperforms there. Good call.
John, do you have anything to add about the Argent Port deck?
I don't. I think you guys have said everything I had.
Alex?
In mind, so.
Yeah, I love the access to great removal, and if you can be in this deck, do it. This deck is really good.
It is fun to play, I'm not gonna lie. It feels pretty busted. Sometimes when you get it going, you're just like, oh, yeah.
This deck even consider me playing the John talked me out of it, but the spell that gives your relic weapon +4/+2.
Oh, illicit armament.
Yeah, briefly. I didn't put it in, but
this close.
Yeah.
Only if Nightmare at the Gates was in the draft format. That might be a different story, maybe.
Mm-hmm. If only.
I might go for that.
Yeah. Of note, one other rare that I want to mention is the Spectral Scythe. Just if you have multiple ways, siphoners primarily, to pump up your weapons, putting that +3/+3 on the 2/3 unblockable weapon ends up being a very fast clock for your opponent. And that one, you pretty much, unless it's a must-answer threat, you just want to keep going face with it and force your opponent to deal with it. And then, of course, once again, like I said at the beginning, there's going to be rares that are just great. Like, yes, you can mention Severin. Yes, you can mention Aura Piercer, but they're just good in any Shadow deck. It doesn't have to be Argent Port Armory, so that's why we didn't mention them. We're trying to focus on the cards that really synergize with these decks.
Same with like that 7/7, right? Like that's kind of too late. Yeah, that's just kind of a good Justice card, right? Like I think you in this Argent Port deck, you're really looking more at Backbreaker.
Yeah,
for the most part. Like, you'd play it, but it's just more efficient for this deck.
Yeah, Greatsword is just busted on its own. You don't need any kind of support to run Greatsword.
Right.
But that's gonna do it for Argent Port, which once again, and it could also have any kind of combination of the two. You don't have to be 100% sack and armory. You could be more armory, you could be more sack, and vice versa. Any combination of what the packs give you and how you would like to build the deck, because obviously you can put in urgent missives and things like that to facilitate it if you are running a more sack synergizing deck with the Mysterious Waystone, or you just have a bunch of weapons and you want to pump them out. But with that comes into our final faction pairing, which is Combre. So Batteriez, without further ado, take it away, my friend.
Yeah, Combre. So every time I draft Combre at all, I usually just end up in good stuff. There's the ramp sub theme too, which is pretty good, but that kind of just ramps you into good stuff. So to start off with like some of the cards you might want to play in your Combre deck. Desert Alchemist. It's a 2-drop, 2/1 deadly ambush plunder. Super good card. If you see Desert Alchemist early, it's super great to pick up early. Having that plunder, removal, it plays so many different roles. And then on the ramp aspect for 2-drops, you have Apprentice Mage, 2 cost, 2/2, maximum power increases by 1. You have Learned Herbalist, fantastic card. 2-drop, 2/2. Whenever you play a spell, you gain 1 health. And you can discard a card to get a Secret Pages, which is a fast spell, 3 cost, and plays a Sigil Depleted. Really good for splashing too, and picking up those influences you have and getting to those big units. And then you have cards as well in time, like Blurhaze Worm. If you're picking up enough fast speed and ambush effects, Blurhaze Worm is great. You're going to draw 2 cards from it. You're going to get a big unit. There's not much to hate there. But if you're not getting the fast stuff, it's not that great. Leyline Tracer is super good. I have really liked Leyline Tracer. It combines well with things like Victor's Cry and Unbreakable Tradition to put in a lot of damage in one turn. You can just start beating your opponent up out of nowhere with Leyline Tracer and the Justice buff effects. Sage of Sands is another solid card. 5 cost, 5/5. Just a solid body. You can also use it summon effect, which gives any unit endurance and overwhelm. So you can break opponents' imbue effects as well as buff your own. And then you have, of course, Disappear, the 6 cost, 4-time, put a unit on the bottom of its owner's library. Super good fast spell, good interaction. You're just going to take any bomb, any threat, anything that's an issue to you, and just get it off the board. And then you have Reality Snap, 6 cost fast spell with Revenge. Put 2 of your opponent's units into their hand. Just good for buying time, opening up big attacks with your Leyline Tracers and your big units. Then there's Omen Scar Worm, 8 cost, quad time, 8/8, Surge, draw a card. This is one of the big cards that's like really nice to have, especially if you're ramping. You're going to be playing a bunch of power. You're going to be playing things like Leyline or Learned Herbalist. So you're going to be surging and drawing a bunch of cards, and that's kind of going to be one of the ways you try to close out the game is when your opponent's like running out of gas, you just start drawing a bunch of cards and eventually you overwhelm them. From the Justice side of things, you have Solemn Clergy. Normally, like I know people are kind of iffy about it. I really like Clergy. Even though it's just a 1/1 body, I can't count the amount of times that a Clergy has hit the board and just stalled the board because that silence effect is just backbreaking in this high synergy format we have. There's so many great silence targets in the format, and the fact that it has Plunder allows you to manipulate your hand so you can get to your big units. Kara Vanguard, solid card for Combre. It stalls out the game. It's a 3/5 for 3. On turn 3, it's just going to block a bunch of stuff, let you get to that late game so you can get your big ramp payoffs or, getting your good stuff like Omen, Scar Worm, and future picks here. You have the Justice Tricks, Victor's Cry, and Unbreakable Tradition. Fantastic work with Leyline Tracer. Unbreakable Tradition can work with 5 cost matters, Machinist, which is great. I didn't list that one here, but that's another fantastic time card if you're picking up Disappears and Reality Snaps and Unbreakable Traditions. Smogwing Tinker, we've talked about it. Just fantastic, good card. Then there's Hunting Allosaur, which is a 7-cost 4/5. Summon, give one of your units Decay and Killer. Just going to clean up another unit. It's a big unit on board. Decay is super good. Killer is super good. Just a really good card. Really good reason to get your power up to those high costs really fast. Things that are like kind of payoffs, potential signals. If I'm seeing these things get past, or if I see this first one here, Mave, it's the transmute that you get from Beyond. It's a 6-cost, 3x 3 justice. Whenever you play another unit or weapon, it draws a card, and then it puts all your units or weapons from your void into your deck and gives it +4/+4. If I see that card, then I know I want to be in Combri, because that's just a bomb. Things you might see in Pack 2 that might tell you that Combri's open is like Karmic Guardian, 1/4, 4-cost, double time justice, 1 endurance, life steal. Just fantastic. Fly, gets in the air, great for buffs. If you play a bunch of buffs on it, you get a Mantle of Justice. Mantle of Justice is great on that. Desert Marshal, just good interaction. Maybe you might rip a Shenron Speak, and you're like, okay, well, no one's playing Combre, so maybe I can play a Shenron Speaks. It's kind of doesn't go well with the ramp playing very much, but having a way to reset the game with all these powerhouses in the format is a fantastic thing. And then there's Genetrix Irel Wayward, one of the new units from Argent Depths. 3-time, 1 justice, 2-cost. It's a 3/4. Opponents can't discard cards, or players can't discard cards. And then it has Surge. Give your next unit +1/+1. Solid body. You have to be a little bit more leaning in time for it, but it's another one of those ways where you can sort of just stall out the game and eventually just get a big enough board where your opponent can't do anything, and you reality snap and disappear, and you're silencing stuff, and you just end up swinging through. I've drafted Combri quite a bit. I don't even try to draft it. Usually what happens is I'm like going for Siphoner Paladins, and then I'm seeing disappears. You just see all the good cards from Time and Justice come through, and you just play all these good cards, and you just get free wins from all these good cards. What do you think about Combri, Jedi?
Yeah, I think it definitely runs into the problem where sometimes you get the ramp and you don't have much to ramp into, which is a little frustrating. So like, I do think you're right though. I think jumping ahead on power could definitely put you ahead on your opponent. Seeing the disappears, it's the cleanest removal in the format, because it just doesn't care about revenge, doesn't care about entomb, doesn't care about exalted. It just tucks it the bottom of the library or deck, and there's nothing about it. Leyline Tracer, like you said, very difficult to deal with. I think this deck has a lot of stuff going for it. If you can land an Omen Scar Worm, you're sitting pretty. And yeah, Reality Snap is just absolutely backbreaking. Like, that card just, oh god, it can win so many games. And then
the blow.
and then you just have that horrible feeling sitting there like, oh yeah, and when is it gonna come off the top of their deck? Is it gonna be on the there's rarely a time where Reality Snap coming off of Revenge is just gonna, the cool thing about Shenron Speaks too, I'm really glad you mentioned it, is just the simple fact that because it's in the curated packs now, people definitely aren't playing around it. So the potential for blowouts is just huge. I think if you run out 1, maybe 2 units, the opponent's just going to unload their hand. And then you just speak them back to the Stone Age. And you're like, cool, now that we're done, like, here's my 5 and 6 drop. Cool thing about this deck is, like, yeah, it inherently has value in its unit quality. It's just a shame that there's no really powerful card at common to ramp into, so you can just consistently start dropping bombs. But yeah, I think I'm a little higher on Hunting Allosaur than most people are. It definitely depends on what you got going on in your deck. You really want a couple of the Caravan Guards that could kill stuff and survive. You want the Emerald Crafter is a good one because you get the body, and then obviously the Sage of Sands is really the big payoff for hunting Allosaur. Battery Mage, not as much, because that'll probably trade with most of the things you kill, but yeah.
Yeah, that was one reason I declined to include, but like Battery Mage, it's still solid. It's definitely a playable, but that 3 health can be quite the liability.
Yeah, I think Battery Mage is more for the Praxis build with double damage and 5 cost matters and 5 attack matters than it is with the Combray build. But yeah, I think your signals are right on. Karmic Guide and Desert Marshal are just phenomenal, and only Combray wants them 100%. I mean, I've seen Desert Marshals go by pretty late. Karmic Guides, I think most people understand the value of that card, and they value it pretty highly, and they'll take it. Heaven forbid you should take a Karmic Guide and pick up a Mantle or two, or a Ruffian or two, and just completely blow out your opponent with a huge lifesteal swing.
Yeah, it gets so destructive. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention as well with Leyline Tracer, Unbreakable Tradition in Leyline Tracer is so gross. You attack with a Leyline Tracer, and then you say your opponent, maybe they suspect you have a trick and they don't block, or they block with a really big fat unit to get rid of it. You play Unbreakable Tradition on it, it becomes I can't remember what it becomes for the turn. I think it's like an 18/18 or something ridiculous. Let's see. No, it's a 16/16, and then when it I can't come up with the word, brain fart here. When it wears off, it finishes off at 11/11, so it becomes this 11/11 permanently. Just a disgusting unit when you get that to happen.
Yeah, that's synergy with Machinist and you just said the name Leyline Tracer. It just it makes attacking and blocking so difficult for your opponent, because you're just like, do they have it? Do they not have it? Because I mean, there's even metal in the format, right? So if you have something like metal or teleport, if you're swinging in with 5-6 power, they're like, okay, do they have that seed card, or do they have Reality Snap? Do they have Disappear? Is the one that's pretty easy to telegraph, just because you need to have that heavy time influence requirement. But at the same time, if they judge it incorrectly, they think you have Disappear and you have Snap, or they think you have Snap and you have Disappear, that could be a pretty big blowout. So there's some hidden synergies in this deck for sure as well. Alex, do you have anything to add?
No, just once again, another Justice deck that I don't mind being in. I think Batteriez covered it very well, and yeah, I like playing this deck. It's probably like my least favorite of these cards. I mean, of these decks, 'cause a lot of time you could spin your wheels with the ramping and then not get your payoff cards, which tends to happen sometimes, but I do like this deck a lot.
The deck does have access to Nahid's Distillation Packs 2 and 3, so that's something, but I've definitely felt the difference in Limited from that thing being a 4 cost to a 5 cost draw 3 for sure. John?
Yeah, I like Combray in the format. I think there's like kind of 3 ways to go with it. Like the one you guys talked about mostly, which is good stuff, and then the other one, which is the ramp kind of deck. And like you said, if you that one has the fail mode where you just kind of draw your cards in a weird order. Like decks like that can be a little awkward. So, but when it wins, that one's really fun. My favorite Combray archetype we didn't really talk about too much is like closer really to the Huru deck, I guess. I love to play like kind of a lower to the ground aggressive Combray deck where it's like bludgeoners and then like badge of honors and then like leyline tracer, like the more efficient low end units, and then like I like that's my favorite deck to play Greenstone Officer in. And like I love doing imbue on the like overstated units in Combray. Batteriez mentioned Caravan Guard, that's another one that goes great in that deck. And then Blurhaze Worm actually gets to like attack in that deck because you also run some combat tricks, kind of similar to a Rakano deck, to help everything kind of get in every turn. I think that deck is pretty strong too, so worth mentioning.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, yeah, that's a very good point. And you still have access to things like Spelunker, 3/3 that could become a 5/5, as well as Wasp as clean
Yes.
removal as well, and a evasive unit. So yeah, there's definitely an aggressive here based on what you pick up aggressively.
yeah, Combri beats are very real.
Mhm.
Definitely, I can agree with that. You might roll that beautiful curve, and you could beat someone down so quick with a Combri deck.
Yeah. Oh, and if you pick up a mentor too that buffs all your 4 drops, oh my gosh. All right, that is Combre, which is the end of our Justice breakdown. Hope you guys took something away from that. Kind of did, once again, a little bit of a deep dive, so you guys see the specifics, cards that we're looking at to be in these decks, as well as, the signals to let you know that these decks are open, and some of the variations that you could build of this. So let us know. If if you have any more questions, jump on the Discord. You can ask people, hey, what cards do I play? What cards do I cut? Etc. Or if you have a decision point, these kind of things really help you identify what to do in packs 2 and 3 when you may be getting some mixed signals. This helps you draft the deck that has some synergy and has cohesion to get you there to that infamous 7-win deck. But all right, that's going to do it, which means we're going to go into our what's to play this week. And I got to admit, this one is a bit of a doozy. So hopefully you guys didn't spend too much time prepping. And we're going to see what you guys could do with more time than I had, because I think I had about 45 to 90 seconds to figure this one out. And it was a tough spot. What made it so tough is the fact that we missed on our 6 power for X amount of turns, and our opponent was just straight up drawing some serious gas. So what we got going on here, our opponent is on Elysian. We are on Praxis. Once again, you guys can see a photo of this up on YouTube's if you're checking that out. Our opponent has no cards in hand. We have 4. Excuse me. And this is one heck of a board state. So let me go over our hand real quick. Opponent's at 25 life. We're at 2 life. 5 power. We have the Shavka Evangel, 2/2 Berserk for 3. Humbug Nest, a 3-time fast spell. Put 2 1/1 flying humbugs into play. Might Weaver, which we just talked about, gives any unit with plus 5 or more greater attack, double damage. And then the something Sniper, which is the 2/2
Highland Sharpshooter?
Sharpshooter, thank you. Highland Sharpshooter is the 2/2 for 4/5 fire that will deal 2 damage to an enemy when it is summoned. Board state. We have a 2/2 Shavka Evangel, a 3/3 Spelunker without the ultimate activated, or the ultimate still ready. The 2/3 Mentor that buffs your 4 or greater drops. We have a Battle Driver, which is imbued onto the Berserker that Batteriez mentioned earlier, which is now a 4/4 Berserk. And then a 6/4 Flamekeeper that was buffed by the Mentor with Overwhelm and Exalted. Our opponent has a 1/1 Flying Humbug. Or no, it's the Illusion, whatever. The blue one. It's a 1/1 bug. It doesn't matter. It did the plunder thing already.
It's a blue humbug.
Yeah. 2/3 Flying Tornado on our opponent's turn. A 2/3 Mag Stranger. 6/6 Timekeeper with Reckless. So it has power and health equal to the amount of time influence our opponent has. We still have a Forget in our deck, if I remember. Yeah, we do. 2/2 Apprentice Mage, 2/2 Evangel, Grodov Evangel, and then a 5/1. What's this thing called again? It's not Momentum Builder. 5/1. 5/1 that it has invulnerable when it's your turn, so it can attack.
Weird engine thing.
Yeah.
Determination engine.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's start off with you, Batteriez. Show off your skills there, number one. What would you do
here? I have the line, so I'm gonna actually let you guys go first because I'm curious what you guys would do in this situation. But I think I've got something. So I'm curious what you guys say. I don't want to ruin the discussion here. So
Nice.
Sure. No, let's see here. All right, I'll take this crack at it here. So you're in a tough spot, right, with your life total here. Um, so I like first things first. I want to make sure I have enough blockers for everything that's going to come. So the 1/1 is what I would do is for this turn I would play the 2/2 Evangel and leave up the Humbug Nest, and then ambush the flyer when the opponent sends it over. He's also going to send over the 6/6 because that has to attack, which I would block with the 6/4, and then I would put that weapon on my Berserk guy, hoping for some crazy shenanigans with my Might Weaver in a couple of turns from now. That's basically what I would do. You're kind of at the mercy of your opponent's top deck if they draw something, but if you can like not die in the next couple of turns here and make that a 10-8 Berserk overwhelm guy, that's a pretty good unit, and you can probably win this game. So that's what I would do. I mean, it's like a game to be won down the road in a few turns, but you just need to not die right now. So that's the line I would take. I don't know. What do you guys think?
John?
I think that's the exact thing that I would do. Like to shortcut, this whole board state, right? Like you just kind of ignore the 1/1 flyer and you look at everything else. Like, what if your opponent just ace bases here? Well, every single unit has to get blocked, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So like that simplifies things a lot. Like, you have to play another unit. Like, everything's pretty much at parity here, and you're basically just completely set up to do what Alex said with the giant overwhelm berserk attack. And everything is going to work all according to plan unless they just have some ridiculous top deck. So I definitely go for that. Exactly like Alex described, except I'm very much planning on attacking next turn, like, without any hesitation, like no waiting or anything. Like, I'm attacking right away because the opponents on Elysian, like, they're more likely to just have like a bounce or like, snap or anything like that, teleport, and that just any one of those cards just completely ruins this whole strat because it's like a weapon based thing, or like, they can do it like even mid attack. So like the sooner you can just start smashing, the better. And you have like nothing but units in hand and the opponent's straight up top decking, so you like know for a fact that you can at least, at the very worst, throw down another chump next turn and the next turn after, and you've got like the humbug, so you're like multiple units up if you end up having to chump while just smashing with. I mean, this thing is just going to be gigantic. It's going to either decimate his board completely, and then, worst case scenario, you might have to finish up, over some future turns with some weak humbug attack, but hopefully like you get something else to push damage and finish this out really quick, I think. I mean, that's going to be a double damage, like like that's so much damage. The opponent dies so fast. Like, they have to just
10-8
block
double
the heck
damage
out of
berserk.
that. Yeah, and if they for some reason don't block it, they literally just die in 2 turns, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
it's funny you say that. Did you want to add anything to what's the play, Jedi, before I reveal my line?
I'm kind of in between the two of them. I think I would have done what essentially Alex wanted to do, which play the Evangel and then play Humbug to block the 1/2 to keep our life total at 2, or the 1/1. I'm sorry. But then I would block the 6/6 on the Flamekeeper, but I would actually put it on the Flying Humbug, because then we're going to have a 7/5 flyer that's going to have double damage the following turn, and they could block it with their Tornado, but they're still on a 2-turn clock. So, and it leaves us all our ground blockers. That would be, and then obviously if we draw power, we can essentially also, and it gives us the ability to the following turn to play Might Weaver and activate it, which actually I think is a 1-turn clock. Hold on. So they'll block 3. It becomes a 7. It becomes a 7/5. And then you give it the buff. We lost 1 unit, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh yeah, I think that just kills them then. Because yeah, that would kill them. So that would actually just give them. They'd be dead next turn actually. So I think that would be my line. if I had some time. All right, go ahead, Batteries.
So we can actually kill them this turn, surprisingly.
What?
So if you play the Might Weaver and then you activate the Battle Driver and put it on the Flame Keeper, that becomes a 13 attack double damage overwhelm, which is 26 damage, right? So if you take 26, well, let's just kind of count their health total, right? Because they would have to throw everything they have essentially to negate as much damage as possible from that. So they're at -1 essentially from here. If you count the attack on all your other units, including the Berserk from the 4/4, you can deal more damage than they have life total. So you have a lethal attack here, actually.
Oh my
If
god.
you play the Might Weaver, buff the Flame Keeper, and A space Berserk.
So that's actually phenomenal because you have oh man, that's awesome. I'm so glad I screenshotted this. So this is actually a really prime example of, because we were playing defensive for so many turns, we were stuck on trying not to lose instead of switching gears into how do we win.
Exactly.
And yeah, great heads up play there, Batteries. I don't know if I had enough time to do the math to figure that out.
Wait, that's a battle driver under that?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's a
God.
battle driver. It's
Well, there
kind.
you go.
I like this. What's the play? Because it plays out like a puzzle. You know, you see your 2 health. You get
This is
scared.
one
You know,
that's
and
so
you,
much easier if you're like at the controls though, because like you like intuitively know there's a battle driver there that you can click on. I like heard Jedi say it, but I completely forgot about it.
So yeah, no,
Yeah, good
that's
call.
Completely
That's
forgot about Battle Driver as well.
That's 100% the play if you can just kill him here,
Absolutely.
because there's no
you
risk
just
to
killed
it.
him. Yep. Because if you add up all the health from their units, you have 3, 3, 2, 2, and 1, which makes 11. They have 37 health, essentially. And then you have 26 double damage overwhelm. And then with your other units, you have 4, 8, 10, 13, 15, 17. So you have 43 damage coming in.
It did.
And because the Flame Keeper is lethal on its own, it means, you know, like what they could. Oh, let's see. Let's see. If they block the 2/3 on the 2/2, they put. Oh, they have to put all the health into there. Yeah, no, I don't think they can survive the attack. They would have to do a lot of math themselves.
So
yeah.
Jedi's like, go quick. So I just like, all right, no math.
See.
So what you saying?
There's
No math
a lot of
allowed?
math.
No
There's a
problem.
lot of math to do here, right?
Well,
'Cause-
the problem is when I was streaming. So I was streaming this, right? So I was actively talking through my thought
Yep.
process while I was doing it. And you know how it is, Batteries. Like you eat up twice.
I'm
as
gonna
much
double
time.
check to make sure it's lethal because I'm pretty sure it's lethal. I don't think they can.
Is Patchy in the chat?
Yeah, we need some quick math guys.
Yeah,
I have some decent
Pachi, the
mental math.
Overmaster. Collector's really good at math too.
That's hilarious because a lot of the times my lines are like, what math is correct? That it's like, it's going to be a positive play. It might not be the best play, but I know that the math is correct. You know?
Mm-hmm.
That's fun.
Yeah, and I think I actually roped this turn because I was interacting with chat and going through the different lines, and I was like, "Oh crap, rope and do something." I was like, but yeah, sweet. All right, that's super cool. Like, I'm definitely glad we had Batteries on though to pick that out then. So appreciate that. That's the what's the play. So I'll definitely probably put this one in article format, throw it up on Warcry. Okay, so that's our what's the play, which you guys know what comes next. This is our constructed corner, where we get to talk about a deck that, that's right, you don't draft it, you construct it and get to play Gauntlet or Expedition or Throne or Tournament. And because Batteries is on the show, we're going to talk about a deck that I just copied because he streamed it and it seemed fun. I was actually doing it just chatting with Alec or John, and I was like, let me try the deck that Batteries is on or whatnot, and not really knowing how to play it. And it took me, I gotta say, when it finally came together, I was like, oh my god. So without further ado, let's go ahead and break the deck down. This is what do you call it? Hold on. You call it Cheering Prixis, no longer a meme. So this consists of Azurite, Prixis, that's right. Most of you are not going to know what it means, so I'll let Batteriez talk about it because I personally had to craft this card. Not going to lie, I think I had one. But 4 of those, 4 Blazing Salvos, 4 Calibrates, 2 Combust, 4 Kindling Carver, 4 Kato Arena Herald, 4 Tota Circle, 4 Shrine to Carve It, 4 Jek Mercenary Hunter, 4 Aurelian Supplier, 4 Two-Face, 4 Tota Pioneer, 4 Cheering Section, 4 Fire Sigil, 2 Shadow Sigil, 4 Time Sigil, 4 Praxis Vow, 3 Seat of Chaos, 4 Seat of Impulse, 4 Stone Scour Vow, and then a market consisting of Annihilate, Desert Alchemist, Hasty Builder, Inner Peace Ascendant, and Vox Nurturing Sadist. Without further ado, Batteriez, take it away, you all-star you.
Oh man, this deck is just such it's like a Rube Goldberg machine in Eternal.
Yeah,
you just assemble all these little contraptions and they make this crazy outcome, right? So the backbone of the deck is Cheering Section. 4 cost, when a player discards 1 or more card, play a 0/1 Totemite. Kind of seems like, not a fairly lackluster effect for 4 cost. But then you slap an Azerite Prixis down on the board. The 0 cost relic. When one of your units dies, discard the top card of your deck. If Azerite Prixis is on the bottom of your deck at the start of the game, play it. So sometimes you get it randomly free. But the way this interacts with Cheering Section, anytime one of your units dies, you discard a card. So then you get an 0/1 Totemite. And that's only if you have 1 Cheering Section in play. If you have 2 Cheering Section in play, now anytime a unit dies, you get 2 0/1 Totemites. If multiple units die at one time, you only get the trigger once. So there's a little bit of way to kind of reduce the opponent's board. But you can also start sacrificing units with the Cheering Section. Once per turn, you can sacrifice any number of Totemites to get 1 power. So you can start using your Cheering Sections to generate Totemites. And then you also have Tota Circle in the deck, which anytime you play or at the end of your turn, draw a card for each Totemite you played this turn. So you're playing all these Totemites, you're killing them off, you're drawing a ton of cards. And then you have your final kind of piece to the contraption, which is Shrine to Carve It. Your units have 2 attack, charge, lifesteal, if you have sacrificed a unit this turn, which you can do with Cheering Section. So you start developing units, and you're always chumping. Your opponent can't get through on the ground unless they have Overwhelm. And then all of a sudden, you're just constantly attacking them with this ever-growing board of Totas that just get bigger, and there's more, and you're drawing more cards. And before you know it, the game is over, and you're just left in a pile of dust by these Totas.
You're really not wrong. That is so true. And it's funny because I've seen it where my opponents are trying to figure out what I'm trying to do. And sometimes it looks like they have the upper hand, and then all of a sudden the engine just goes off and you have a full board and they're all 4/1s life steals, and they're just like, they try to kill a couple of things and more Totas pop out. It's just like, what is going on?
Yeah, it's totally crazy. Some might say.
Just racking up those points, man. Racking up those points. John, Alex, have either of you guys come across this deck on the ladder yet?
I came across it against Batteriez directly, and he whooped my butt with it. Yeah.
No, this is too complicated and expensive, I think, for your average Eternal player. So haven't come across this one just yet, except when you and I played intentionally.
Yeah, I had no idea what was going on.
Like this is there's I don't know the right word I'm looking for, but like legendaries that are so specific to a deck like this, right? Like it's hard to like pull the trigger if you're short on resources, right? So it's the only unfortunate thing, because this deck pops off, it's fun to play, like it's all the things I like in a good Eternal deck, to be completely honest.
Unless you're Jedi and you had 3 Tota Circles from end of the month rewards just sitting in your in your.
Oh man, you have 3 premium Tota circles?
No, I think I have.
Oh,
I
okay,
have
okay.
two. I have two. The
Oh man,
the
Huge.
I'm still jealous.
no.
Still jealous.
My troll card is Sacrato or whatever it is, the
Yes.
4/5 that deals
Me
7 to
too.
himself.
I have, like,
I have
3 of
3
those.
premiums of those.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and then I think I drafted a Prixis at some point because I was like, well, that's a legendary I don't have, so I'll draft it. But yeah, the deck is a lot of fun. The cool thing is that there's never a dull moment. It kind of plays out the same way, and yet it kind of doesn't based on what your opponent's doing. It can surprisingly beat out a Milos. I've beat Milos a couple of times with this deck based on how quickly you can get the engine online. If you're a little behind the times, and you might not be able to outrace the lifesteal mechanic, but sometimes you can. If not, you have Combust on the board, but that's pretty much that or a Svetya. It took me a second to realize. I'm like, why is my board not covered in Totas?
Yes.
I'm like, oh yeah, Svetya.
It hurts so bad when someone drops a Svetty on the board. I was experimenting with some Avoid Deaths in the deck for a bit, which do discard cards. And so you can kind of remove those from the opponent's hand sometimes. I'm still not sure exactly if the deck should be playing those or combusts or what interaction. The deck is still a mystery to me, honestly.
Yeah.
It's kind of more like I stumbled upon it, just kind of playing with Tota Circle, Cheering Section, and Prixis for so long.
Yeah.
So be careful, the deck will mill itself. It took me a second to figure out. I'm like, why is Hasty Builder in here? And I was like, oh, to stop you from dying. Got it.
Yeah, it's not uncommon to, you'll end up with turns where you mill 20 plus cards from your deck and you draw 20 plus cards in one turn and you're like, oh, wait a minute. That was basically my entire deck.
Right.
Yeah.
You've probably developed some rules about like playing it out, right? As far as how many, like if you draw so many of certain of the relics, like do you probably sandbag some of them or?
Oh, definitely. I even wrote it in the notes for Warcry because I mean, I prefaced it by saying one day I'll write how to play this deck, but it might be like a 300-page novel. But you don't want to have more than one Prixis out in play.
Yep.
Because you're probably going to mill yourself out. There's very fringe cases where you might want to, say you absolutely need a shrine to win that game or that turn. You have a bunch of Tota circles out or cheering sections out so you can generate a ton of power. Maybe you want to play that second Prixis out, mill out your entire deck so you can find that Shrine in the Void and then return it with Inner Peace Ascendant. But it's very, very fringe. It's not something you're generally going to do. Tota Circle, that one's a little bit more lenient because you actually get the cards to play. But it'll mill you just as fast as having 2 Prixis out. You start playing 20 Tota in a turn and now you're drawing 40 cards and you only get to keep 9 of them, so
right. Yeah.
Yep.
Sweet.
According to Shiftstone, it does not include campaign cost. Of course, it is 54,900 Shiftstone, so take that for what it's worth. Also, thankfully, I don't know if you want to do this or not, but I guess as a budget variant, you can also put the Prixis, make one, put it in your market, and then run what's his face, Broker.
I actually have been theorizing that maybe you could probably just get away with one Prixis anyway, because the deck has quite a few natural discard synergies. You could just play like another card that you could remove 3 Prixis and play 3 Avoid Death, for example, and then you have another card that discards cards. It's going to be a little more budget friendly. Sure, you might not get your Rude Goldberg machine up and running as often, but you might play a better generic game plan more often because you still have Kato, Carver, Pioneer, Two-Face, Supplier, Jack, Combust, Salvo. You have these like core cards that are just still great in FTS, so you can kind of play a normal game plan sometimes, and then just kind of randomly just pop off every now and then. So that definitely is an option.
Sweet. Yeah, definitely check it out, guys. It's a fun deck to play, or at the very least, tune in to Batteriez to watch him play it and pilot it like a champion instead of watching me stumble all over myself and my totemites. So, that being said, That takes us to our closing statement. So, Batteriez, where can people find you?
If you want to catch me on my Twitch channel, you can find me at Batteriez ECG. That's my Twitch handle. I occasionally post things on Twitter too. I think I have a link on my Twitch channel. I'm actually not sure what my Twitter handle is. There's a link to my Discord, a permanent link to my Discord as well on the Twitch channel, so you can find it there as well. We got our little recharge room going. We talk about different things, play Smash, play Halo sometimes, share Eternal memes, talk about what's going on with the stream and whatnot. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. You make excellent content. It's awesome to be here with you guys. You're all so cool and chill. Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on.
Do you talk departmentally? You don't thank me. I'm the host. I thank you first, bro.
No, I totally got you there.
Oh man, that's it. I'm gonna edit it. I'm gonna fix this. I'm gonna turn this around in post. All right, well,
Rearrange it.
you can catch the three of us at twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, and watch John and Alex just Yoda facepalm as I punt the plays that they would have actually done correctly. And if not, you can search EternalJourney on YouTube to find the video version of this show, along with other draft content and some constructed stuff I'm trying to put together little by little, tournament reports and whatnot, including a sick equalized play that won me a game I should have totally lost. It's going to be probably going up tomorrow. And of course, join the Discord as well, man. We have a phenomenal community there. People talking about absolutely everything under the sun. Primarily Eternal, but a lot of good stuff going on there. Draft stuff. I think this first week of Sealed, we had 10 people post their decks. I was a brewing fiend. Some people, I was like, you have 2 decks here. Mwahaha. And then our pet channel was popping off because, pets are great. Maybe one day we'll get John back on Twitch, but of course, because of his internet, you can catch him streaming occasionally, all secret style on the Discord, so check him out there. Batteriez, thank you so much for being on the show, dude. You were absolute delight. Thank you for letting us share your deck and giving us your insight, because you were like, hey, I'm going to start drafting one day, and all of a sudden you're top 3 on a super consistent basis. So thanks for sharing your insight with us on the show, man.
Oh, thank you again, sir, so much. I very much appreciate you guys. Amazing podcast, great Discord, great community, great Twitch channel. You guys are all awesome. Thank you again.
That's the order. That's how it goes. Okay. But all right, guys, that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, until next time, happy gaming.
Bye.
Good luck in your draft keys, everyone.